Meanwhile, Iran and Iraq have fought nearly a decade-long war back in the 1980s. Now, leaked Iranian intelligence documents now reveal a complex tale of how Tehran has been wielding influence over Iraq and the challenges that it has been facing. Now, the New York Times has accessed almost about 700 pages of the leaked cables, and these were written between the years 2014 and 2015. So let's first tell you about the big takeaways. Now, Iran is not only infiltrated reportedly into the Iraqi intelligence, it also has close ties with the current Iraqi Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi and several Kurdish leaders as well. Now, the documents also indicate that Iran influences leadership changes in Iraq, and that the country has also paid American agents to switch sides. Not only that, it's also been revealed that the Iranian intelligence keeps a close watch on US soldiers as well. Now, the Revolutionary Guard Quds force plays a pretty important role in Iraq. Now, the Quds unit's head Major General Soleimani very frequently visits Iraq as well. But the immediate question that of course arises is, how did Iran come to wield so much influence over Iraq? Now, it all started after the US invasion of Iraq back in 2003 that led to the deposition of Saddam Hussein. There was a power vacuum, and that of course has led the Iranians to increase their sphere of influence. Now, the lack of a post-invasion plan by the United States of course led to all of this, and this of course is a gap that's now been filled by Iran. Now, both countries have a majority Shia population. Iraq has about 60% population that is Shia. Now, during Saddam Hussein's rule in Iraq, power was predominantly in the hands of the Sunni minority, who were about 40% of the Iraqi population. Now, after the invasion, the United States disbanded the Sunni-dominated Iraqi Ba'ath Party of Saddam Hussein. Now, the deposed Sunni elite then engaged in terror activities to target the Americans and other authorities faced by the threat of sectarian violence. Now, the Iraqi Shias began seeing Iran as a protector. Now, the entry of the ISIS was followed by US reinforcements in Iraq, but Washington was not able to fully counter Tehran's influence. Now, the leaked cables also have said that there was an ISIS threat. Iraq had allowed Iran to use its airspace to transport weapons to Syria in the war against the ISIS. Now, Iran wants to avoid political instability in Iraq. It also wants to keep terrorism and the Kurdish separatism in check in its neighboring nation to maintain regional stability. But there's also one other condition, that Iraq remains Iran's client state. So what is Iran's current position in Iraq? Now, interestingly, the leaked cables reveal a rift between the moderate Iranian intelligence under President Hassan Rouhani and the Quds force. Now, the Iranian intelligence ministry feels that the Quds unit has failed to take measures to win the support of the Iraqi population. Now, the Quds force also face a backlash over the massacres carried out by the Iraqi fighters that it had trained. Now, the recent anti-government protests in Iraq pose a challenge to the Iranian hegemony. Now, besides pushing for economic measures, the demonstrators are also calling for an end to the Iranian influence in Iraqi politics. Now, Iran is using its soft power to try and maintain its grip on Iraq. It's also shifted its focus on the economy and development. Now, Tehran has been funding a series of infrastructural projects in Iraq.
We urge these forces to immediately stop any form of interference in Hong Kong affairs.
All right, let's now shift our attention to Hong Kong, where the siege at Hong Kong's Polytechnic University is finally over. The Hong Kong police took down the barricades and have arrested several protesters after a dramatic showdown. Now, the university campuses have been witnessing a series of clashes in Hong Kong over the past few days. Now, there's been constant action at Hong Kong's Polytechnic University ever since hundreds of protesters descended on the campus last week and converted the place into an arena for staging pro-democracy protests. Now, violent clashes were also witnessed after the police tried to storm the place and evacuate the protesters from the university. Now, their efforts paid off as the exhausted and the injured protesters finally gave in. The police removed the barricades set up by the protesters to gain access. Now, prior to this, the police also fired rubber bullets and tear gas to push back the protesters. Now, the police warned them to drop petrol bombs and other weapons used against the police. Now, amidst fears of a bloody crackdown, several people tried to flee but were pushed inside by the police, who also put up barricades. Now, dozens choked on tear gas and, being without gas masks, found it extremely hard to escape. Now, dodging tear gas canisters and sponge grenades, the protesters found the going pretty tough and decided to end the night of mayhem playing out in the Chinese-administered city. Now, the police also arrested some protesters while others were pinned to the ground. Many scrambled to escape but tripped over barricades and fences. Universities in Hong Kong have also become a bit of a hot spot for protests. Months of anti-government protests have caused turmoil in the city. The latest spate of violence is some of the worst that has been witnessed in the city since the movement began. The police have become the target for the demonstrators, who in return have accused them of using excessive force. Meanwhile, China's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Liu Xiaoming, addressed a press conference in London condemning the violent protests in Hong Kong. He said that what is being witnessed is quote-unquote black terror. Now, the Chinese envoy has also accused the United States and the United Kingdom of interfering in what he states is effectively China's internal affairs.
We would like to tell these external forces solemnly that the Chinese government remains unwavering in its resolve to oppose any external interference in Hong Kong affairs. We urge these forces to immediately stop any form of interference in Hong Kong affairs and China's internal affairs, and immediately stop condoning violent offenses. Otherwise, they would lift the stone only to drop it on their own feet.
Now, Xiaoming also pointed towards the escalation in tensions in the Asian financial hub over the last 5 months and how attempts have been made to undermine the one country, two systems principle. Now, Liu Xiaoming has said that the heightened violence is in fact pushing Hong Kong into an extremely dangerous situation. Liu has firmly supported Hong Kong's police, saying that the protests had nothing to do with the so-called democracy for freedom.